And then in that honesty, there's a chance for life to show us something. It's like when something is agitating, I can say, okay.
How much better it is than it was.
It's not even progress. It's actually just less inundation.
So, Mandee, thank you so much for joining me. I'd like to start by asking you about relaxation. I heard you speak about what happens often to us when we, walk into a yoga studio or begin our practice, that automatically, the body, relaxes, and you're asking the question, what more would we want? And relaxed is a concept, a word that I think about often. Someone asked me if you can go back to your younger self and share with your younger self, one message, what would it be? And I realized that it would be to just to relax and to trust, So I wanted to ask you about, relaxation and how that word feels to you and how important it is to remember to relax.
It's funny because, like, one of the things that I've learned over the years is sometimes the simplest things are the deepest things. And we all know what it's like to relax, but the value of it and really even what it is, in a sense that what it has come to me is how natural it is to be relaxed. It may not be normal, but it's natural in an uncontrived moment, in a worry-free moment. And so in a sense, that's what we want. We want worry-free moments. So relaxation is a profound experience, but it's so simple as well. I mean, after teaching and people coming to the classes, it's always such a pleasure to just watch people walk in, and just as they come through the door, you just see the shoulders go down. It's sort of like this space is a bit symbolic of where they want to be. And so when they walk into the space, it's a reminder of coming home, being here. It's so natural, it's not something even that we have to learn. But it is something that there are ways to help each other with that.
Right. That's what I'm thinking about too. I think you said, it's natural, but not necessarily normal.
Yeah,
right?
certainly not.
So what's the role in community to help us progress, on the path, and how important is it to surround yourself with a community that you feel is healthy?
Yeah, again, like it's so easy for us to see, like in our own experience, anyone, whether they've ever stepped on a yoga mat or not, that when we're in community with people who are high strung, or if it's a tense environment, we become tense. And so you can see how the community it lends itself in a way, just being in the, amongst others who are tense. It shares itself. So if you're in community of those who are interested in relaxation, it shares itself, just that relaxation. Even just being with a friend, if you had like a difficult day and your friend was just listening in a relaxed way, you start to relax. So if you're talking about community, it's so sweet to surround yourself in a community that's interested in relaxation, because we share so much. You can tell someone to relax, but if you're not relaxed, it doesn't share itself in the same way. But if you're relaxed, it shares itself. And so I'd say that's what I say about community. Like it matters.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think, is everything contagious? You know,
Well, we
with
share so much,
yeah,
we
yeah,
share so much. And in fact, even the teachings, we think that the teachings that we hear are shared through words, but really so much shares itself in community, in being, with, our teacher. It's not necessarily even just the word. Something is sharing itself. So it's true. Like if everything is contagious, it's important in terms of like who you want to, what do you want to catch?
yeah. Yeah. So I'd love to ask you about words, actually, and how you maybe personally uh, develop a relationship with words, what that right relationship is, right? Because words can be so beautiful, reading a spiritual text or listening to a speaker, but all of that in a way is up in the mind, right? And a word is just a construction. A human being decided to construct this word to label a feeling and an emotion. And so do you practice kind of dropping down into the feelings of the word and moving beyond them, even in a way? Is that an important practice for you?
Well, I wouldn't call it a practice, but I find that question interesting, you know, because the power of the word is where it's coming from. So it's a nice tool that we have when it's coming from understanding. So, like there's an example where Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen master, overheard one of his students saying something, and he said, "That's not true." And the student said, "Well, you said that yesterday." And he says, "When I said it was true." So, really, words are really wonderful tools that we have to communicate and share something. But what's most important is for us to be honest and to share from our experience, from our understanding. If we're sharing just from something that we've kind of intellectually understood, it might be a nice conversation, but really when we're sharing from our experience, those words gain power. So the words are wonderful. And some words are incredibly wonderful when they're words that point to really deep things, because they can take you there. Sometimes a word will shine in a way and take you somewhere. So it's fascinating. And then that word can just go, and a new word can be what transports you to understanding. So I love words.
Yeah, yeah. You've taken me to the place where, yeah, I'm reading something, and like you said, just it transports you to another place, and it's really wonderful. It makes me think about right relationship, and just balance and how much time with each thing, as opposed to putting something in a category of like right and wrong. Instead, I've become a lot more interested in the question, how much, right? Like how much time with words, how much time with silence, right? Because the sweetness for me is in the balance of that.
Yeah, well, how would we know how much time unless we're just following our heart?
Mm. Yeah.
When we impose time, it's a different topic.
Right. So is it as simple as that? Just feeling into the heart every moment and allowing the heart to guide us uh, in the direction that feels right. Is that is that as simple as it gets?
We could say so. A lot of poets have written about that. But it's a question of what we're calling our heart, you know?
Mm.
But
What
we
would you
know,
call the heart?
like a deep openness, deep knowing. It's, yeah, we know. Somehow we know. It's not really in time.
How about a trust in my natural self?
I love that. How do we know what that is?
The natural self?
Yeah, what are we referring to?
Yeah. I think of it as maybe like a foundation of acceptance. And what's helpful for me is to remember that I'm a part of nature, and everything that's a part of nature is acceptable. It just is. So therefore I can trust. I don't need to try to be something that I'm not.
It's beautiful. You can feel the tension in trying to be something.
Yeah.
You can feel that you're leaving in a way. So much tension in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think often about how that even begins within a human to try to be something, because I don't think it's natural. I was watching children, that concept is totally foreign to them, to try to be something. What are you talking about? I am.
Yeah, until the parents say, "What are you going to be when you grow up?"
Right.
It was Robert Adams who said that his parents asked him that, and they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he goes, "What kind of a question is that?" He actually said that back to his parents, and he's like, "Nothing." And they sent him to the psychiatrist.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that even like the notion of the notion of predicting the future, or planning? Not planning necessarily, but maybe expecting something to happen in the future. Maybe I don't have the exact right words for this, but in a way, I feel that it's insulting to life, to nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an arrogance to the mind.
Right.
Yeah. It's also so innocent of parents to want the best for their children. And when you say that we need to trust our natural self, like how many parents are in that state of trust where they can actually create a space for a child to bloom, and to let all of their creativity and joy find its way, and let it not be about what they're doing, but about the joy itself, about the enthusiasm itself, which can actually change from thing to thing. When you set your goal on one thing, it doesn't allow for life to fluctuate. And as our interests do, even with kids, they play with a certain toys and then they drop them and they go on to the next thing. But the adult says, like, how rude to just drop the toy, But it's so natural to let your enthusiasm flow in that state of trust,
I wonder if it's even possible for an adult to create that kind of environment if they're not living it themselves. Right? I think about that a lot with my daughter. It's like there's no shortcut. I need to be the example. Like that's my goal. Like I believe that so fully, that's the most powerful thing, is for me to live it and continue to work on myself, and just trusting the effect that will have. Yeah. For her. Yeah.
It's a deeper teaching, As you say, not what we say, not just the words, but we teach from who we are. That's what gets shared, ultimately. So it's beautiful that you're bringing that into your family.
Yeah, but
It's
also
obviously possible.
yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I think the challenge is to change habits, right? The grooves that have become a part of me in a way, to shift those. I mean, this is what the practice of yoga to me is all about, is creating new grooves, and being, honest with myself. I want to ask you about this actually is, seeing reality, and the reality within ourselves, and how important it is to be honest. And if I'm not being honest, can I really grow?
Yeah. It seems like if the journey is to notice all the ways that we weren't, letting that go and being, honest with ourselves. In fact, how else can we be here if we're not more and more honest with where we are? And then in that honesty, there's a chance for life to show us something. But if we're telling ourselves something, it's kind of like a cloud that keeps us from seeing something,
The story cloud.
Honesty and innocence, they're sort of hand in hand in a way.
Mm.
And how do we be honest with ourselves if we're not a little gentle with ourselves too?
Right. This is the foundation of acceptance, I think, which allows for gentleness. Like everything's okay. All those grooves are totally fine. And when I can accept everything, that's a much easier place to move from, I feel.
Yeah, I find that a little tricky too, and I agree. I just find it a little tricky because we value acceptance. But whether the mind accepts or not, I can be here. Mm. The mind evaluates and it formulates and it creates. And so in terms of acceptance, what are we speaking about? Because what we are is never rejected anything. So it's really a matter of being ourselves, whether the mind is in resistance or whether the mind is the deep acceptance is not something we do, but it is something that we can encourage in terms of just our mental processes. In a way, there are a lot of people on the path that say, oh, everything, all is well. And then you can see that it's like, oh, well, why did the bus driver not stop? Or, So we can say that. But moment by moment by moment, it's already a welcome.
It is, right? Acceptance is.
Yeah. But yeah. It's just ways of looking at it in different ways. Like from the perspective of mind or from the perspective of what is already natural. Before my mind would reject something, it's already here. So it's, in fact, I don't have to accept. I don't have to make myself accept.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just an awareness of the reality.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you can see that in nature, you can see that. It's so visible that it's already okay.
So I think another aspect of that is, the fluctuations. What you mentioned, like I could have a moment where not only the mind accepts, but, I feel that deep in my heart of just total peace and acceptance of how everything is. And that is a genuine experience. And then maybe a matter of hours later, something agitates me. And like you said, the the bus driver was late or whatnot. And that's gone, right? For me, this has been one of the most important takeaways, I think, from looking at reality. My takeaway is that fluctuation is inevitable. It's just the way of nature. It's the way of life.
Yeah. And I would ask, what is gone? Because if it's a feeling of peace, that's in the realm of of time. And so the peace is like when something is agitating, I can say, okay to the agitation. There's a peace in that. Okay. And so sometimes we attribute that peace to a state. But states come and go. But the peace that we seek is always here, no matter what's going on in the body and the mind. But of course, as human beings, we want a peaceful state, and it's natural.
Is that the point that you're making, that peaceful state can be more of the time when I realize that it's always there, that maybe it's getting covered up, but it's always there. It's never gone.
Yeah, and I would say it's not even covered in a sense. It's maybe covered from, maybe there's more going on, as you say, that it's covering. But the reason we might feel like it's covered up is because we're still attributing peace to a state. Because it's always here. Never covered. But in our experience, it can appear covered if we think that it's covering up some peaceful state. To us, it appears covered. But how could it be covered? It appears covered because it's such an obstacle on the path to want a peaceful state. If we think that peace is something that's not happening right now, we might have an idea about peace. Like it can be in a total state of contraction. But peace is here.
And love as well?
I would say. How could it not? In the absence of something else, in the absence of a belief in our, and we can see that it's here. But it's more of an intuition.
What an experience this is. Yeah. Playfulness. It's become more and more important for me, I would say. Practice of remembering playfulness.
I always say, if it's not fun, it's not yoga. That's what I always say.
There you go. Yeah. Right.
That's
Swami Satchidananda would say when asked what's the point of life, he says to have fun, and I love that so much. Yeah.
It's like so natural because we want to have fun, but sometimes we've been conditioned that life is hard. So we should,
the other word is appropriate. I think fun to me is appropriate to be playful, to not take anything too seriously.
Mm. That's a
That
revelation.
Yeah, that's the word for me, is appropriate, and gratitude is appropriate. I feel that.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Mm. It's natural. Like what we're talking about is all natural. And in a way, it's really nice to talk about it, because it was described by the First Nations community that I used to live near. And they said that we've left the natural in a way. And so, in a sense, what we're interested in here is a return to the natural. So even even the scientists are just noticing more and more that animals are playing, and but in the past they would project this industrial view of the universe, but now that they're opening up to seeing like that it's so natural to see the animals playing and see the birds flying, and you can feel that there's a joy and a freedom to
Mm.
that. And appropriate, how could we know moment to moment, just in term unless we go here, right? Because the mind might say appropriate. It's a word. What do you mean by that word appropriate? I'm just wondering.
You're asking me. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I mean by it? I mean, I think like natural would be the connection. In alignment,
Yeah,
perhaps.
that's what I thought you meant. Yeah, because sometimes it's a mental construction.
Yeah. No,
Because how do we know what's appropriate, 1 second ahead of time?
mm, yeah. The mind, what do you feel is the right relationship with the mind? Because, often I think maybe in spiritual circles a little bit, the mind almost gets a bad rap.
It sure
To
does.
me, the mind is a beautiful, uh, beautiful construct. I mean, and is capable of so much, and we depend on the mind for a lot. Uh, Perhaps we depend on it for too much. You know, uh, I definitely think that that's the case. But I also don't want to make the mind the enemy. I want to appreciate the mind and respect the mind also.
Mm. Yeah, my teacher Francis Lucille, he's very clear. He really brought that clarity to that, talking about how there are different kinds of thoughts. There are thoughts that take us into confusion and contraction. You could say down, but there are thoughts that are practical, like how to bake a cake. And then there are thoughts that lift us up and take us higher in terms of higher reasoning. And so the different qualities of thinking. And yeah, and it's a wonderful tool, and in fact, what's wrong with the mind? It's just that our mind is sometimes full of worry and full of anxiety. So
And exhausted.
yeah. But, when you mention trust, I think it's because we trust it instead of ourselves.
I think about it like this sometimes, like the mind needs a job, you know, uh, but what that job is can be almost limitless. So I can give my mind the job of focusing on the body or the heart dropping in. I can give the mind the job of giving itself a rest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, give ourselves a rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a part of the yogic path is about giving the mind something to do. And ultimately, I think that can address the symptoms of the mind, of not the symptoms of the mind, but the symptoms of going to thought and thought taking us in a certain direction. So we just give our mind another focus. But really understanding, I thought Nisargadatta, he said it best. He said, a thought arises and I disregard it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's because we're interested. And so I found that when people approach meditation, they're trying to control their mind. And to some extent, you can learn concentration and focus and redirection, and it can have functional value. But it doesn't promise any happiness, right?
Mm.
And so the path of Jnana Yoga is the path of understanding. But when we understand, well, I'm thinking because I'm interested in my thoughts, then we're not fighting with ourselves anymore. We realize that we're interested. It's like, I shouldn't think, but I'm kind of interested. I shouldn't think, but I'm kind of interested. So then we can question, well, what is my interest,
Mm.
And why
I love that question.
Yeah.
That question, what is my interest? Great question.
Yeah, because it can shift the whole thing. The mind is more flexible than, we say the mind, we're just using that as a term, but we're talking about our thought process, right? Like thinking. What I've noticed is that it's more fluid than we can imagine, because one timeless moment of understanding and the whole thing changes. As soon as we understand something else. Like it's almost like our thought process serves our understanding. So if our understanding is in terms of limitation or stress, then our thought process will serve our understanding.
Mm.
And so in a way, we don't want to fight with ourselves along the way, even though we do, it seems that way. But if it's more like, and sometimes, let's say there's something on the mind and it's something that keeps coming, and it's something that happened yesterday or something, and it's the neighbor. And then we have these instructions from our meditative circles to sort of release or let it go. In a way, it's a type of energy too. It's a type of energy. So kind of like putting a lid on an energy can almost put some pressure on it. So there's something to say to also just allowing it to work itself out.
Mm.
You don't have to get too involved with it. Allowing it to run its course. Sometimes when we get too involved, we're just adding more energy to the situation. So there's something, but it's easy to say, just allow it to run its course. And that's where we can deepen in that skillfulness, maybe.
This makes me think of something I heard you speak about, which is, getting over ourselves to find ourselves. And this is something that interests me a lot, I would say, is getting over myself, right? It's extremely freeing to not take myself seriously.
So great. So great.
And I think I realized at a certain point of time, like I was just so tired of judging and analyzing myself. And I realized that I could move through my entire life obsessed with myself, you know? And when I realized that, it was like great breath of fresh air. It was like, oh my gosh, I don't need to take myself so seriously.
And I love that you use the word realization. Because, you know, we can say that. We can say, oh, don't take it seriously, or don't take it personally. But then when we realize it, it's a realization. Oh, it's not serious. And that, you know, if we're not taking ourselves seriously, we're surely not taking anything seriously. And that actually challenges the conditioning. It's like, well, you should take this seriously. So we're not, but that, I think that would be one of the biggest joys of realization, is to realize it's not as serious as we thought. And when you say not taking yourself seriously, for me, the realization was not taking myself personally, which I think is the same.
Yeah.
I don't take myself personally. Yeah. Which is a funny thing to say.
It's so freeing.
Yeah.
It's
that's
totally,
how you know.
Yeah. Like there were shackles on me that I didn't realize were there, and they were released. And that was the gateway, I think, for more playfulness too. Now I can just play, can relax.
Yeah. Not so serious. Yeah. I had a friend who, you know, he was interested in yoga and meditation, and he said he went through this divorce, and he said it wasn't so serious. And it was so funny for him to use those two words, you know, not serious, and something that a lot of people may struggle with, you know. So just that it can go deep into our life, this lightness. I mean, what do we want, really? Do we want to be right, or do we want to be happy and, you know, not so serious as, oh.
Being right is a big thing, right? That's a part of that game of
The
personality, you know?
Right.
I am right.
Yeah. That's why they say in India, this finger is a rude finger. So, so they bend it.
Yeah.
It's the ego, right? I know, I'm right.
Yeah.
We suffer from that.
We do. And I think that realization perhaps leads to less words, because I don't need to, why am I speaking? No, because I realize it so often, you know, be speaking to be right, wanting to be right.
Yeah. I think it's also like when I'm speaking with you, I get a sense that it's a mix too, because there's also a joy to like share. But
Right.
yeah.
There's it. It's like I think about it like art more than anything. Like life is this. Yeah, it's making art.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, what is art? You know, it's freedom, beauty.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is healing and awakening. Healing and awakening. I wanted to ask you what the relationship is between the two.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess, you know, we would have to be clear on what is awakening, you know, because if it has something to do with healing, then it would suggest that there needs to be a state or a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the body for awakening. But there does seem to be a, you know, a condition of the Sometimes on the yogic path, I see that this assumption that we improve in order to awaken. But what I've noticed is that with the realization of these deep understandings, healing happens because we're not involved so much in our misunderstandings that might have created some of the challenges. It depends on what you mean by healing, because some things are really just not in our hands in terms of the body. So it depends on what you mean by healing. But, what we are doesn't need to heal. But the body mind is, it's a matter of respect, It's a matter of respect and how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of our homes and how we take care of each other. We can improve our understanding of how to take care of our body and address the needs of our body and maybe even our thought processes, But sometimes there is this assumption that we have to sort of perfect the body mind, and that can be an obstacle in terms of, perfect the body mind in terms of like achieving something.
Perfection as opposed to never-ending growth.
Yeah, like and like it's just maintenance, really, general maintenance. I mean, it's always like growing, and life is always teaching us something. That's the joy, as you say, the playfulness is, we're always learning and growing, and if we're awake and alive, it's, and we're, in terms of healing, we might be undoing some of what has come along with the body mind. So it might not even be personal, what we're working through.
Do you ever reflect back on the past for yourself, maybe in how you used to be and where you are now, and maybe how different it is, like your experience of living, how different it is now than the way that it used to be? And and I ask because something I've been considering is about, I think often we don't realize how much better it is than it was, because the present is very magnetic. The present just calls for us, and we just are here now. And I'm wondering if you ever take the time to reflect, and in a way, even if there's a place to celebrate a little bit the progression that we've made, and our experience of living now, and maybe how much, if it feels healthier than it used to be. Yeah.
I would say that for me, not so much, except in the one way that it's a way to know that we're heading in the right direction. That we can go, oh, yeah. But in terms of celebrating, the celebration celebrates itself in our freedom. We don't have to think about it. It's the fact that you can say, I love playfulness, is an example of the celebration without making it more than like about progress. In fact, it's not even progress. It's actually just less inundation. Because we've always been here.
Cleaner, perhaps.
I hesitate to use those terms.
Mm.
It's just because even if it, I mean, I'd say that, it's, we just end up doing what we want when we want in the way that we want more and more in our life. And we are where we need to be, less going off road and more in the flow of, and it's not even like these big ideas. It's just whatever's next, It's just whatever's next. I'm not sure what the question is now.
It's good.
It's just fun to share.
Yeah. I guess a little bit of the consideration is the tendency perhaps to have a negativity bias, because there's always more, right? I could always improve. I could always grow.
Well, the body mind can.
Yeah. The body mind. The true self, I think, is your point, doesn't need to grow, or right. Yeah. But all levels, right? Like, I feel that my life experience is a fluctuation between levels, and I would like to have a healthy relationship with every single level that there is. The body mind level, the true self level, like whatever the level is. I want a healthy relationship with that level.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's that sounds also like natural, but maybe not normal, right? Wanting to be healthy, and when you said honesty, like, it can become healthy instantaneously in our honesty.
Right. That's my point. I think a little bit that, if I'm being honest, at least for myself, there's a tendency for the mind, say, to focus on the negative, and as I'm aware of that, I don't know if that's a tendency that I want to continue so much, because it feels endless to me. I can always find something to hold on to that's, it's worry, it's fear, essentially. There's always something I could be afraid about. So instead, to look at that relationship with fear and the root of it, and as another way of getting free.
Yeah. I think this is what I've noticed, and you can let me know what you think, is in terms of trust. You brought that word up in the beginning. Like, if we're in a moment of, we just use an example of like fear or stress, where do we go for answers? So we trust our thinking. For some reason, we just go to our thinking, and we think that that's where the answers are. But if you look at the thinking, it's referring to the past. So it refers to the past, and so maybe that negativity bias is sort of a byproduct of like giving the thought process the power to have the authority to be the one to try to improve our situation. So it's always evaluating. And so we, to step back from the mind is having openness to trusting in life, in ourselves. And in a way, when we do trust in life and ourselves, it sort of helps us to disengage from the tendency to go to the mind. Because, like, again, I could just see so often in yogic circles this We're fighting with ourselves. We're like, don't go to the mind, don't. But we're fighting with ourselves because at that moment, it might be our best intelligence. Like, well, how can I not go to the mind when I really need to figure this out, you know, or because we just haven't really taken time to open up to, is there something that we can trust here in ourselves, in life, and in a way that kind of unplugs the energy of going to the mind. There might be still some energy or momentum, as you say, some habitual energy of going to the mind, but we will continue to go to the mind if that's where we think all of the answers come from. But then, if you look at the content of thought, as you were saying, not all thought is wonderful sometimes, There's also this idea of a fresh thought. It seems to come out of nowhere. So there's also this possibility that insight can come to the mind, but it seems to come from somewhere else. It's not recurring from memory. It occurs in our availability. And then all of a sudden we say, well, I did that. But anyway, it's just interesting. I really appreciate seeing this, because what a relief, because we don't have to fight with it. We don't have to control it. It's just a matter of understanding why we go there, why it's doing that. It's innocent. It's just a process, It's not negative. It's just it's based on fear. It's based on fear. A lot, without fear, there's thoughts is almost non-existent. When you're happy.
I love that. It's really helpful for me to reflect on that in those moments, the tendency is to rely on the mind, to go to the mind, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
It's usually like we could be struggling with something. They say this about like the inventors, they're struggling with a problem, and all of a sudden they're exhausted. And in that moment of exhaustion, and then they, bing, So in a way, you can actually give the dog a bone. You can exhaust the mind, and then when you're completely relaxed, then we feel more open to something new.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to ask you about is, there are so many processes in yoga and teachers, lineages, and I've heard about you. I've heard you speaking about, check it out for yourself. This relying on your own, I think, intuition, and that's something that I think can be challenging for people. I don't know. I reflect on this a lot, and I go back to, maybe it's because of our childhoods, that we were told, like, you need to do this and this and this, and there wasn't a lot of freedom to think for yourself. It was, no, you need to think this way, you need to do that, and so we continue to rely on that process, and then we're following a script. Even I think this is the pull to religions. A lot of times it's like, it's easier in a way, like, you tell me what to do in my life and I'm just going to listen to you and follow the path. But what I've reflected on is that, like, there's no getting away from deciding yourself. Like, even if I've chosen to follow, a script, a path, I'm still the one that made that choice. So what is this freedom to decide. So I would just love to hear if you have anything to kind of share around this topic. Yeah.
It's a really important point to check it out for ourselves. there's no value in an understanding that comes from hearsay. It doesn't, like, will it produce the fruit in our lives of understanding? And so it's nice to, I think that's what I love the most about the yogic path, because it was always about finding the truth within yourself. Never, like, it was always about finding the truth within ourselves, finding it, and finding our own evidence for it. And all the teachings helped us to find it for ourselves, because that's where the value is. There's no value in an understanding that we go, oh yeah, that sounds true. You know, that really sounds true. I'm gonna, and you can see how that breaks down in, as you say, in some religions when it's a belief, because you can, people say, well, that's not very Christian, or, you can see that when people are living according to hearsay or concept, it's missing an integration in our own understanding, so that we might understand it and know what it is, to, like, as it's been told to us. But then when we turn around and live our lives, how do we take what we've heard and live it if we don't know it? And so the value of knowing it for yourself is shown in our life, in our happiness, in our playfulness, in our non-seriousness, is a reflection that we did check it out for ourselves. We can hold hearsay, and we can do a pretty good job of holding it up, but it doesn't have any real foundation to it in terms of when it matters most. Because really, it's when it's least convenient that these things matter the most. That's when your deep understanding really can shine, is in life and how we live our lives. And if we didn't find out for ourselves, then we'll be reaching. It's like, well, what did they say? And then maybe I can use that. But when we know it, we live it. So, and I think that's what I love about yoga. And I agree that in our conditioning, we've been given mixed messages, in a sense, because we're told, like, don't look outside, sit up, sit straight, look at your books, or, but our heart is somewhere else, and we're taught to go against what's, and of course, we need parameters for children, that's what we do, but ultimately it's more like we go against ourselves, and then at a certain point we even forget that we're doing that, and then we live in a state of conflict. And what I see is that, when I offer this class in conscious eating and nutrition, and so people will come to the class with all these books and paper, because they want to write down, like, what's good for you, super nutrition, and what's not good for you. And I'm like, you think I'm going to tell you? It's really about asking yourself. Of course, we can use knowledge, but is coffee good for you? Is it not good for you? How would you know unless you find out for yourself? And that to me, that's yoga.
Oh, I love it so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I sense too is that there's maybe a fear of the natural self, like, and that comes about with children a lot, that to allow children to just be, we can't do that, like, that's going to be chaotic, and so I see there the distrust in our humanity of what we are, and I wonder in the future if that will shift, and we'll develop this deeper trust in our humanity. Yeah.
it's a wonder. Life is all full of everything. But this deep trust is eternal. So as humanity ebbs and flows the way that our own lives do, sometimes, sometimes. I don't know about humanity, but it's happening right here. So I would say it's happening.
You sense that there's a progression taking place, or you're not sure about that?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think that's what we want, as in our minds. We want things to progress, but it comes from the idea that something is not progressed and it's progressing. But we don't even know. We don't even know.
Don't know.
But we can project with our mind what is ideal, or it. But that in itself is leaving our moment and our honesty, our not knowing. Like, I don't know what's best for humanity. I don't know what's best for the universe.
This humility, the humility of the not knowing. Thank you for presencing me to that. And what I found is that I can be okay with not knowing. I can be more than okay with it.
Yeah, and in fact, life is always surprising us in wonderful ways. So that's really kind of sweet in a way, because we project these ideals, but life is always sort of surprising us, and it doesn't have a sense of being progress. Life is just always shining in its own way. And yeah. But I know as on the relative level, there's this, we want things to go in a certain way.
Yeah, I do. I feel, though, in my heart, I'll say, one of the swamis here that lives here said to me one time that truth is like a magnetic force. It's like a tractor beam pulling us toward it. And that felt really true in my heart, and something that feels right. I don't know, but I feel that there's something to that. And since I've heard that, I've kind of just been watching and seeing, is that what's going on? Yeah.
Oh, you mean like collectively?
Collectively, if wherever we are, but that is true. The truth is a foundation that eventually, the truth reveals itself, and that makes me feel that there's a progression to that, as we move endlessly in the direction towards truth. Not always, obviously, like straight ahead, but again, this is all play of the mind, I guess.
Well, you could say that, but also, like, if I look at my own experience, that life was always showing me the way. It just was a matter of me being open to it. It was always showing me the way. I didn't always have the question, but it was always like showing me the way. So in a way, life has this wisdom to it. But if you look at an individual life rather than humanity, if someone is going through a difficult time, we could look at it on that level of progress, like going through the difficult time and progressing. But was the difficult time wrong? It was actually life showing something.
Of course.
Yeah, so it's not like a degress or progress. It's just that whatever's going on is sort of, I get a feeling of peace when I realize that, it's doing this, not humanity.
Mm.
You know, it's lifing, and it's lifing in all kinds of ways. And you know, it's funny because, like, you know, Francis talks about, like, it's a, you know, when we feel serious, we feel like it's real serious, you know. But when you, and he gave this metaphor once, or he said, like, the kids are outside and they're playing cops and robbers, and it's real serious, you know. They're jumping on each other and they're doing everything. And then mom says, lunch is ready. And they're like, "Aw." You know, it's like, it's life is lifing. And it's our projections that, but of course I understand what you're saying, you know, like there's this beauty to living wisely in it, and progress would be natural in that sense.
Well, certain maybe progress even in in what you're sharing, to accept the whole process of it, to have that awareness.
Yeah, nothing is bad when we, you know, but we can't say that if we don't feel that. We have to be honest with ourselves. But when we do take that step back and we look, we go, wow, you know, life was really showing me something there.
Mandee, thank you so much. Really enjoyed this time. It's been very special. I want to ask you if anyone would like to connect with you more, find out more about what you're doing. What's the best way to do that?
Well, I have a website, yogaheart.ca, because I'm in Canada. And so you can always find my contact information on the web. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Avi. I really enjoyed this too. I really enjoy speaking with you. I just feel the shared joy.
Yeah. Me too. It's fun. You never know what to expect, and it's a real gem in my day.
Me too. I'm smiling.
And your fire in the background there, I think it's still got a little bit going.
Time for put another log on the fire. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thanks again, Mandee.
Thank you, Avi.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this content and think others might as well, please feel free to share and subscribe.